about resolutions. The great thing about visioning is that if you learn this technique for dealing with the critic, when the critic comes up, not only in the visioning process, but in your life, you'll be able to use it. You'll be able to get a hold of it. Because the symptoms that this critic is working over time have to do with feeling depressed, blocked, frustrated, tense, tired. There's all kinds of symptoms that show that the critic is probably working overtime and telling you what's wrong with you, or why you didn't get it right, shoulda, coulda, woulda, and all that stuff. I want to explain a little bit about why and how this works. The critical faculty, it has to do with linear time and with expectations and with criticism and judgment, is very much connected to your left brain. That's why judgment is always verbal. You always hear it as a voice saying, you should have done this, or how stupid, you should have done that, why didn't you do this, or you'll never be able to do this, etc. And that is a verbal voice that gets programmed in as we grow up. People in our lives told us by body language, mostly words, that we were not measuring up, or that we would not measure up in the future. Okay. So that inner judgment got encoded in language through our left brain, because that's where our language centers are. And that is what stops us from being our fully creative selves. Because somebody else's version of reality got programmed in there about who we are and what we're capable of. And unless we learn to deal with that, we're always going to be stuck with it. It's in the back of our heads. It's like elevator music. It's there 24/7. And sometimes, and oftentimes, we're not fully aware of it. And what I want to do is give you a tool for becoming fully aware of it. When you're fully aware of it, it loses its power. The metaphor I like to use is the fairy tale about the emperor's new clothes, where everybody was kowtowing to the emperor and going along with his reality that he had, this tailor was making him these fabulous clothes when he had no clothes on. It was a child in the story, the inner child, the right brain that tells the truth. That was the one that says, this guy doesn't have any clothes on. What is all this? Why is everybody saying that? It's obvious he doesn't have any clothes on. So what we're going to do is unmask that voice, and we're going to get under what it's saying. Because it will say things that sound rational and reasonable, and you may at first agree with it. But if you do that, it will keep you in a box of old realities, of other people's versions of who you are, and of old ways of thinking. And then you can't break out into becoming the person that you would want to be. The other thing about this work is when you do visioning, you're bringing into awareness a different part of your personality. You're bringing a different part of your personality out in order to manifest this. The part of me that came out when I manifested the house, well, many parts. It's a very domestic part. It's a part that likes to live in the country. I was living in Marina del Rey before, in the city. It's a part that likes to have its own art studio, because I have that in this house. It's a part that loves to sit and look at nature, because my whole house is surrounded by woods. So those parts of myself wanted to come out. That's what I mean about what we're going for is experience. It's not just about the house, it's about what parts of my personality have been able to come out and thrive living in this particular house. Okay? And so we have to let those parts have their expression. That's what this is all about. You're going to be seeing images in these collages that really represent parts of you. And that's what the journaling is all about. But we have to get past this gatekeeper, this critic, who's going to try to tell you that you can't have this, you can't afford it, and there's all these reasons why you can't. So we're going to let it have its say. Everybody has this voice. And the way you're going to do this is start out by writing with your dominant hand. This is the hand you normally write with, on that 8.5 by 11 paper. And let your critic write in the second person. Why are we doing the second person? We want to get the word I out of the picture, because that's what we do now. We criticize ourselves with the word I, and we think it's us talking. It's not us. It's a voice that we learned from outside. So we want to put it back outside by grammatically putting it in the second person, as if another person were talking to us. That's a very different experience. So the critic will say what it did when I wrote my first book. You can't write. You're no author. What makes you think blah, blah, blah? Okay. The reason I know this works is because I wouldn't have written my first book, which is sitting there on the shelf of Creative Journal, without this exercise. And that particular exercise is actually pictured in that book. Later on, after you get that out, I want you to let the inner child answer back and sass back. We were told not to be sassy when we were kids. We were told not to sass back. But I'm giving you permission to do that, because that critic that's in your left brain that you memorized growing up is doing great damage if you allow it to continue like that. So whenever a new part of you wants to be born, new experiences, new talents, new abilities, that part needs nurturing. But it's going to have to confront this critic first. That's like the gatekeeper to creativity. It's a block. So it asks you to confront it. And it strengthens you. Do you really mean it? Are you going to really, really honor your heart's desire? Or are you going to let this critic just walk all over you? It's as simple as that. So if you don't want the critic to walk all over you, this is the exercise to do. So it's going to say what it says in the second person about everything that you selected here, about your focus phrase, everything you've done this morning. I want you to let your critic just tromp all over it. What are you doing here? You should be home working on your taxes, blah, 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 blah. You have more important things to do. This isn't going to happen. You're wasting your time. All that stuff. Then I want you to switch pens. And I'm going to tell you when to switch pens or get a new pen. And then answer back from your inner child, Brett. And tell it off, just like I did. Shut up, get out, fuck off, whatever you want to say. You have my permission to say anything.